Namaste, friends, and welcome to our Sunday edition of Words of Wisdom Gyan Ganga on our Virat Hindustan Sangam social media channels, which we have on various platforms, beaming to our members and friends and well wishers across the globe, where Dr. Subramanian Swamy on every Sunday at 8 p.m. talks on a variety of subjects. We have today our 146th episode, and I'm happy to tell you that in the last episode, which we discussed on Ladakh, the viewership has been where one of our guests was Mr. Stopden. The viewership has been nearly 66,188 viewers across the globe. And our viewership, depending on the topic, but has been very encouraging across on various social media podcast channels. Today, we have a very interesting topic. It is the book release of a new book written by Dr. Subramanian Swamy, our patron president of Virat Hindustan Sangam. And the book is titled The Hindu Manifesto for India's Democracy, which Dr. Swamy is holding. And today, at the release of this book and for the discussion on this book, we will be having Dr. Swamy himself speak on the need of the book, what is in the book, and we will be having question answers. I have with me my co-host Ramesh Swamy, and perhaps Arvind Chaturvedi, as he is traveling, may be able to join, but we are not sure. So I thank Ramesh Swamy, and I also have to thank our technical team led by Ashish Shetty, Tejas Navalgul, Swaminathan, Ishwar Iyer, Rakesh Gadgi, Ajesh Nair, and Vishal Mehta for their support to put this program together. So we thank you, viewers. There is a barcode which is displayed on the top right hand of the screen. You can scan it and perhaps even order the book online from Amazon. This is for the benefit of our viewers. But as we go, we'll tell you more about the book. And as the QR code is shown here, it's on the top right hand side. You can always scan it and order the book. So with these words, it is over to Dr. Subramanian Swamy to tell us on the Hindu Manifesto for India's Democracy. Over to Dr. Swamy.
Yeah. Thank you, Jagdish. I thought that I should now write a book with the term manifesto, because manifesto is for implementation. So far, the books I've written on the Hindutva issue or the Hindu issue has been to bring out what people didn't realize, that we are one people, we are a continuing civilization, and from a most developed country for thousands of years, we declined heavily, and now we must try and revive that world situation that we had. And that potential is now there. This century could mark the beginning of the turning point. So for that, you need a mindset. As I've explained to you, mindset is very important. No matter how much strength you have or how many numbers you have, it's not enough. You need a mindset. Well, I've always given you examples in a variety of my meetings that you can have 1,000 goats, but when they see one tiger, they'll all run away. Even though in numbers they are much larger than a single tiger. So that's the way the goat's mind work. Similarly, you have 5 strong, well-fed lions in a circus. They will meekly obey a thin ringmaster who is within their reach and inside a cage, which can tear him to pieces, but they obey him. And they do all kinds of gymnastics for him, because from the very cub stage of the lions, they are brought up to obey the ringmaster. So the mindset is extremely important, and it is that which, unlike the Mughals, the British concentrated on the mindset. And there are examples and examples I have where the Britishers themselves have said, this is our aim. For example, I have a quote of one of the people, which one of the Britishers, who said the whole idea of our textbooks is to ensure that the Indians don't think like Indians, but they'll think of themselves as an inferior people. And this led to the Minute on Education, and ultimately all our books, everything was changed. Sanskrit was targeted and English replaced it. And so now we have to come out of it. All the brainwashing that has taken place, feeling of inability, the feeling of superiority of the West, and things like that. Those are crudely put, some of the concepts. So why I have done is that I did have a book which was very wide selling in the very beginning when I started. It was called The Hindus Under Siege. It was released by the 𝐶𝐴 then 𝐶𝐴 Sudarshanji. Jayendra Saraswati came all the way from Kanchipuram in Delhi, and was saying Ashok Singhal was there. It was at a point when the country was in a kind of a gloom because the UP had come to power and the Hindu terror and all these things that started. So it was a good antidote. And of course, there were attempts to silence me at Harvard University. They picked a thing about my saying that Muslim mosques can be demolished now. That has been proved by the Supreme Court. And there was an attempt to silence people who could articulate the Hindu cause. Now, I can articulate the Hindu cause because I'm a Hindu. If I tomorrow start articulating what the Muslims should do, there will be a reaction. So I don't want it. Anyway, I'm happy to see that the process of integration of Muslims with Hindus has begun very silently. And we don't want to publicize it too much, but for example, triple talaq was abolished and there was hardly any objection. We had a agreement with the Muslims on the implementation of the Ram Janmabhoomi judgment, and they agreed to go to another place and build a masjid there, rather than insist that it should be where it was, as it was the situation earlier. And there are a number of things. And also I find from statistics which I've got from a Hindu newspaper, which is by no means a fanatic Hindu paper, even though the name is Hindu, which has a headline which says fertility rates of Hindus and Muslims are converging. It's true. If you look at the number of children Muslim families have in Kerala, it's smaller than the number of children the Hindus in Uttar Pradesh have. Why? Because as the economic situation improves, people want aspirations for the children grow up, so they automatically start restricting the number of children. That has been witnessed all over the world. It's witnessed in our country. So it's now over a period of time when the Hindus are themselves, their brainwashing is removed and the history books are falsified. We need to be able to bring the minorities, particularly the Muslim community, which according to me has the same DNA as all of us, because they are all originally descended from Hindus. There may be here and there some foreign element which came in as oppressors, but the over generation after generation, they have today, if you take the DNA studies of Muslims, it's the same as Hindus. So they are descended from Hindus, and that descendants, we are not saying that you must flaunt as your greatest achievement or your greatest passport, but to say that we are one people and that oneness needs to come. So I thought that the best thing is that first of all, the Hindus who are brainwashed, how they can be brought around. What are the things that we... So earlier on I was talking about various things, but now I am talking more in terms of implementation by a political party, and that of course is today the BJP. And the BJP, if it's not hijacked, is definitely the party which is supposed to promote Hindutva, not against anyone else, but with the Hindus, to transform their way of thinking. So it is in that sense what needs to be implemented and how that I wanted to write this book. And that's why it's called Hindu Manifesto for Indian Democracy. It has to be in the concept, in the context of democracy. And democracy is means the fundamental rights, all these things. All of them are, by the way, things which would not would certify what I am saying. It will be within that. And for instance, even on Hindutva, Justice the Supreme Court judge in a case of 𝐓𝐡𝐞 said as Hindutva is not a communal thing. You can always talk about Hinduness of people. If you are a Hindu, you have to have a Hinduness. So the acceptance of Hindu Renaissance for the people of India, who are Hindus are 80%, and if you include the Sikhs and the Buddhists and the Jains, we are 82.5% of the population. It's a huge population, and we only want the constitution to be implemented. So uniform civil code is part of the constitution. Sanskrit is part of the constitution. Many of these things that we have been talking about is part of the constitution. So now the two major blows that we suffered during the British period. I mean, in the case of the Mughal period, it was mostly physical, and Mughals have disappeared. Nobody. I mean, if you were to ask, can you find a descendant of Aurangzeb? Where you can search the whole of India. Some imposters might come and say, no, I am the descendant. But fact is that so far, no one has been found. But we can have, descendants of Shivaji, descendants of the Cholas, all these you can today identify. They may not be in the same glory as their ancestors were, but the fact is that the continuing of the Hindu civilization has never been. It has been broken. It has been stunted. It's been all that, but it didn't disappear. In fact, the UNESCO had tabulated 25 civilizations, and what did they find? They found that the only civilization, not 25, 45. And what did they find? 44 have disappeared. The Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, you just go on. Even the Chinese have undergone, I think, the Ming dynasty was gave way to Qing dynasty. Qing dynasty were all Mongols who came from abroad. So our thing is a continuing one, and the Vedas are the same, the Upanishads are the same, and so on. So the continuation of our culture, our religion, is taken for granted, and therefore now in the modern context, what is it that we need to have? So I am saying that the two great damages that the British did is, one, wipe out deliberately Sanskrit, and now we are told many things about Sanskrit, not by us but by Westerners. The NASA says that in the future, artificial intelligence will have to be in Sanskrit because it won't confuse the robots, for example. Because in Sanskrit, everything is precise. In English, if you write PUT, it's put, and if you write BUT, it is but. It's not but. So the English is, you see, the phonetics is all screwed up. Almost French, of course, is out of the question. So Sanskrit is precise, and Devanagari script is very precise, and Devanagari script is very similar to other scripts. For instance, Tamil, if you write K, it looks very much like the K of the Devanagari. If you write Ki, it is this very much like the Devanagari, just a matra. And if you write Ku, you put a matra below, just like Tamil. So, I mean, all these people who have been trying to create separativeness have not had a challenge from those who talk about the oneness of our people. So I'm trying to bring that in the form of implementation. Why I say manifesto? Because manifesto means implementation when you have given authority or power by the people. So without the people's consent, we can't do it. But these are the things that needs to be done. So I would like to, say today that there are simple things which I would like our people to do. On Sunday, wear only Indian clothes. Don't wear Western clothes. Our ministers go wearing tie and all. They look like butlers and waiters, but they don't mind. They think this is the way of fashion. Even in our own country, I don't mind. I mean, Western dress is fine. It's okay. But the fact of the matter is that we don't want the Indian dress to be wiped out. So therefore, at least on Sunday, you wear kurta pajama. Women, of course, have maintained that tradition in India. They have. You can see that they will not hesitate. Even very highly educated in English Indians, Hindus rather, they wear on special occasion they'll wear a sari and come. So therefore, it is the men who have to learn that to accommodate sort of our traditional attire and not be ashamed of it, and not flaunt the Western dress. So I therefore I begin by saying that we have to make ourselves aware of the beautiful things that have been taught in the past. Now, Jagdish and friends through the VSHS have organized this Gita class. Nothing could be better than that. I mean, Gita has everything in it. And can you believe God himself says in the end, I've taught you everything I know. He tells Arjuna, I've taught you everything you know. Now it is for you to decide what to do. I mean, he doesn't say to follow me. I am directing you to do it, which happens in other religions. Fatwas are issued in other religions. But now the Krishna explains in detail. And then he tells in the end, now I'm telling you, I've told you everything I know, but you have to decide what you want to do. So this democratic temper has been essentially a part of this Hindu tradition. And so I'm trying to emphasize what will be furthering the democratic and what is the things that we have to do. So we have to see that this kind of thing is taught. Our curriculum is very important. I tell you, if you ask me which is more important to reform in our country, the economy or our education, I would be in a dilemma, because I think both are equally important, and it's very difficult. One can happen with the other. If you don't have good educational system, you can never be a superpower in economics. And without a good economic system, you can't have good schools and colleges and so on. So they're both together. So this is something that I would like to say. In my preface, I have put 5 points, which I like to read it in the very preface itself. And if this book, if you instead of buying from Amazon, you bought straight from the publisher, Haran, I think they'll give it to you for about 100 rupees or 150 rupees lower than what Amazon will charge. So why did I write this book? I put in the preface: to research and propound and propagate a new ideological framework that can unite the people as belonging to one nation, make the people strive to global greatness and struggle for world power. A national renaissance for which is required. So this is one. Second point, if we are to pick up the thread of renaissance from where it had been snapped in 1947, because renaissance had begun already with Swamy Vivekananda, Aurobindo, Swami Dayanand Saraswati of Arya Samaj. So many Swamijis had been contributing to reviving the Hindu faith and giving new interpretation to it. Then, of course, Mahatma Gandhi also did quite a lot, and we can't forget it because of his political decisions. But he had he used to hold a prayer meeting where he made everybody sing Raghupati Raghava Rajaram. So, and he extolled the Maryada Purushottam qualities of Lord Rama. So I would say that the way we began the Renaissance, this has to be continued. The third point I'm saying is that we have a Hindutva-driven party, but its leadership is today, despite its almost 8 years of absolute majority, has done precious little to implement. The Ram temple was not done by the government; it was done essentially first by Ashok Singhal, and then after he handed it over to me through the court by bringing in the question of faith, and not it's not my property versus your property. The whole proceedings of the Allahabad High Court is only on whose property it is. Who was there first, who was there second, who's by by the fact that you hadn't agitated for it for 300 years, whose property did it become? This was all that was being discussed. But I brought in the question of faith and of course the fundamental rights, and as a consequence, we were able to get a quick, accelerated proceedings, and we won the case. So now, but you see, there are a lot of retrograde steps. Take what happened in Uttarakhand. All temples were taken over. Why is Ram Setu not being declared as a heritage monument? And why is it that you have not given the kind of precedence we said we'll give in our manifesto to Sanskrit? Sanskrit should have been made an optional course in every state, and there are people to learn. If you don't want to learn, you need not learn, but it should be optionally done, because Sanskrit is now for artificial intelligence, for even brain development. If you go to Google and look at the St. James School of London, which is one of the most prestigious schools, there the children are made to recite Sanskrit shlokas from the age of 6 to 11. And the principal says openly brain development is enhanced by those students of mine who agreed to do this morning Sanskrit shlokas recitation. So this is a discovery of the gods, and we have not followed it with the way we should. Now, know this, that India has been partitioned. Slowly, first Afghanistan went, then Burma went, and like that, and finally Pakistan. But after that, we have not. Why? Because many other countries were very strong central government. USSR, Soviet Union as it's called, Union Socialist Soviet Republic, that Soviet Union was very powerful, very militarily and very strictly controlled. All their education system was full of brainwashing, all that, and yet it broke into 16 countries. Yugoslavia, same thing, strong dictatorship, Marshal Tito, and broke into 4. Pakistan, of course, broke into 2, and hopefully they'll break into 4 more. In even Indonesia, a small piece has broken off. So, but India, nothing happened. Maybe we have enhanced a little with the Sikkim coming in, and hopefully some more will come in soon. But the fact is, India has stayed united, despite the fact that all these things were sown, because the undercurrent is very strong. And the emergency, you saw that people voted unitedly. They didn't care whether rich, poor, nothing. They said, no, we want democracy. And never again anybody's going to play with democracy. So this is what you're saying. Now, I however feel that we Hindus still think of loyalty to the family much more than we think about loyalty to the nation. That national consciousness needs to come by a new agenda. And that new agenda slowly should bring in other minorities. Some minorities are already with us. Sikhs, in fact, the constitution doesn't distinguish between Sanatan Dharma and Sikhism. It says Sikh and Buddhists and Jains are also part. And in terms of, shall we say, cultural aspects, Parsis as a community has worked with us without any difficulty, and they have never had any problems. And in fact, the British asked them whether we can give you some special arrangements like we have done for the Anglo-Indians. And they said, no, Hindus have looked after us for so many years, and thousands of years, 1,000 years or more, and we don't need you, you go. So that is the kind of relationship with the non-antagonistic group we had. We have had this we have had this problem with only those who have taken an antagonistic attitude towards the excuse me, there's some phone, so I will so I would say that the issue today is not one of imposing our Hindu-ness on other people. No, no, not at all. There's no imposition here at all. Only that amongst us Hindus, there are so many minuses which we have to get over. The status of women, for example. So, and I've periodically said in all over the country, look at our own heritage. All the important power positions in the heaven were held by women. Durga held with weapons. She was de facto our defense minister. And then Lakshmi was finance minister, and Saraswati was education minister. What they tell me which god had any this kind of position where we do puja for them. When we want to do well in exam, we go to Saraswati. When we want money, we go to Lakshmi. There's no other society in the world which has this kind of reverence for women. We have lost it, but we have to get it back, and there are still women suffering a lot, discrimination, this and that. Well, it's no use blaming our past 600 years or 1,000 years for it. But anyway, this is the way. So I would say, like the Gita classes we have done, we have already now VHS in this 5 years or 7 years has really created a certain momentum in wanting to be known as Hindu, not as a but as a religious and cultural concept. Politically, we are Indians, of course, Bharatiyas, as per the constitution, and culturally we are Hindustanis. If you take everybody, the nice thing I have myself experienced is that even minorities who are Christians, and there's a good number who begin or feel that we can we don't want this these conservatives interpretation of our religion, which puts us all in difficulty. Look at this hijab thing. I mean, it's absurd, and I'm happy to see that Muslims are writing articles now opposing this whole thing. So I would say the issue would be that we have to therefore devise a manifesto for implementation, and that manifesto is what we need to do, which is what I have done today, and I've listed them by chapters. These are not unknown to you, but in terms of how it can be implemented, I have put it in chapters. I begin, of course, with the first fundamental as to who are we. We are one people. All this division of caste, caste, region, nothing matters, because DNA has said we are one people. Are the Muslims a part of that? Yes, of course they are. Are the Christians a part of that? Of course they are. And there's no dispute about the others, Sikhs and Buddhists and so on. So we are one people, and that has to be fostered. We are not come from somewhere else, or we are not Aryans and Dravidians and all that nonsense. Then I also discussed in a chapter the Hindutva principles of economics. Now that's something new. I've produced a table in my this book where I've compared how do you compare economies or economic ideologies, and the way you compare it is by looking at their objectives, and then here it is. You look at the objectives, you look at the priorities of that economic policy, you look at the development strategy in it, and then the resources and the institutions. So if you look at the capitalist, what is the objective in capitalism? Maximization of profit. And sometimes they'll say about welfare, but mostly it is maximization of profit wherever you are. So this profit, it's a one-dimensional society in terms of pursuit of wealth and pleasure. And what will be the priorities? The priorities would be exploitation of resources, and that's how you're having this environment program. And similarly, this development strategy is a primacy. They've given to technology, and they've produced damn good technology. We have to use that, but it's just all technology. I mean, it's human beings have not counted in the way they all have been sidelined. Then you have resources is by the propensity to spend. The Americans' rate of savings, by the way, is even in the best of times is only 2% compared to ours is 34-35% of the GDP is savings by the households. But in the case of America, it's only 2%. Why? Because they can borrow, and the rate of interest is very low. For borrowing, it will be 3%, 4% compared to ours, not less than 12%. So therefore, they spend, and so it's a kind of a materialistic society. And in the case of these socialism, they say these objectives are also economic, but it's more about welfare and things like that. Then you come to communism, then it's maximum production. It's not maximum profit. It's a maximum production. And then it goes on, all the means of production are with the government and so on. It's basically our Hindutva philosophy, which says that not maximum but optimal. That means you balance many other issues. It's not just simply profit. This balancing I believe that the only ideologue in the Jansangh or the Sangha flow has been Deen Dayal Upadhyay. He hasn't had the time. He wrote a very thin thing which needs to be developed, but there's no college. It's not prescribed as a compulsory reading. They're like Marxism is still a compulsory paper, but not integral humanism. This is one of the things that we need to implement. So there he very clearly says that we have to have a harmonization of pursuit of wealth and the spiritual advancement. They both must go together. And you see the Indian society where everybody knows Mahatma Gandhi just wore a langoti sort of dress, and he was a saint. So the more you sacrifice, you become the more respected in our society. There's no other society like that, where giving up the worldly pleasures, the people think, oh, you're a wonderful man. You're a simple, very wonderful man. It's not like that in other societies. So here, in our case, we are actually looking for optimum. There has to be, of course, economic growth. We were, in fact, for thousands of years, we were the most developed country in the world. Sone ki chidiya is the common phrase used to be. But the fact is that the spiritual development plays the mark. So these Swamijis and these pujaris and all these people were regarded so highly only because they gave up everything else for the sake of spiritual advancement. And we followed them, we listened to them. They were not kings, but every king had some sadhu sannyasis in his kingdom, and he used to consult with them, whether it was Veda Vyasa or whether it was Vikramit, many of these other saints which Rama used to consult. So the question basically is that it was a balance between material advancement and spiritual progress. So this has to be now incorporated in our way of thinking. We shouldn't this constant refrain about only placing away of the development. Development is only one aspect, and the other aspect is your human development, and that comes through spiritual. So these are some of the things that I wanted to put it in concrete terms. What you should do, what are the courses you should implement. Uh, History books. If you don't know who you are, how can you be a nation? You will say, "Oh yeah, the British made us." There were, when I was a college student, people would say, "Oh, we were all fighting quarrel amongst ourselves. The British came and put it all together." Now I find, thanks to Ramesh in our team, that somebody has actually documented that in 1857, but for that fiasco of Mangal Pandya, we would have won that. That is, Rani Jhansi would have been victorious. And in order to see that it never happens again, what did the British do? They said the peasantry supported Rani Jhansi. They gave her money, they gave her soldiers. So crack on them. So they created the zamindari system. All criminals were made zamindars. All they had to do is go and collect rent, and as much rent as they wanted, but a certain amount to be given to the British to run the British administration. The whole agriculture collapsed from 1860 onwards to 1947, and of course that process is still continuing. Not in those terms, but in other terms. But the fact is that the British broke the back of the peasantry. Why? Because of the fact that Rani Jhansi was able to mount a rebellion, which she nearly won. And consequently, you saw afterwards in what way the British made sure that your mind will never think in these terms except to think of yourselves as slaves. And that's why they wanted you to dress like them, eat like them, even use fork and knife like them. All the British manners. But of course, know your place. You are not a white man. So that is the kind of thing that had been put into the mind of the people. So I would say, therefore, that my book, which contains 6 chapters and 5 topics, is aimed at making a new Indian, a new Hindu to be exact, and a new Hindu who is not going to compare himself with whether we are better than Muslims or better than Christians. We are not concerned with that. Whether we are regaining what we were, the kind of society where there is spiritual, not only spiritual, scientific research, calculus, everything India had known before the Western, and even rocketry. The Americans themselves, there's a book by George Gamow. He starts by saying it's the Indians who taught us rocketry. And the rockets, of course, Tipu Sultan took advantage of it, and he snatched our rockets, and then he used it against, on behalf of the French. He was fighting on behalf of the French, the British, and he used it against them. And it is British then who picked up those rockets, used rockets, and took it to Britain, and then that's how the rocket was produced by the British first. Then, of course, the Americans took it to great heights. So I'm saying this on the question of Muslims and Christians. We have to convince them in a subtle way that your DNA and our DNA is same, and whatever it is, we are of this country. So culturally, you can be like us. Like Indians who will settle down in America, they look like Americans. I mean, there are people, first generation like Ramesh and all, can resist it. But you will see the next generation or the next generation after that, they will all sort of assimilate into that American system. They do it consciously. And therefore, so I would say the same DNA. And we have to assert this because it makes a psychological difference. We defeated anyone who came here ultimately. The Mughals lasted 600 years, but ultimately we defeated them. Where are the Mughals today? Can you find out any descendant of a Mughal today? No, you can't. And look at the poverty the Muslims are compared to Hindus. They themselves say that Muslims need reservations because they are much poorer than Hindus, the average Hindus. This is because of the fact that we ultimately defeated them. And it went in, we did in some parts, we didn't do in some parts, and ultimately we didn't yield. And we are still a very large percentage of people. The way people converted is very much smaller. I have no fear that the Muslim population will outgrow Indian population. All these things that I see, it doesn't show that. I say even today, the Muslims in the educated part of South have fewer children than the northern poor Hindus. So this is a issue which will happen slowly. And now I've seen now new studies which show that the fertility rates of the Hindus and Muslims is now converging. So no, that's not the issue. That's not the problem. The problem is a united culture, and that is what we have to work for. And we are here for we have been here. We have come through a lot of difficulty, but now there's no harm if in the future, after the next election, perhaps a government comes which is unabashed. I don't care what the Americans will say if they criticize you or not, or the Europeans will criticize you. You do criticize all years, we'll also criticize you and ask for all the money you stole from us to be returned back. But the idea is to develop a new Indian by developing first a new Hindu. A Hindu who doesn't believe in all this, that the Varna system is by birth. It's not by birth. It never was. Lord Krishna has said it several times in Gita, and everybody has said it. It's a gunas. It's the profession you choose. I don't mind saying I'm a Brahmin because I have been a professor and I have not chased money. I have not looked for great pleasures of life, going to Riviera for a bath and so on. So these gunas, if you join the military, be proud Kshatriya. Maybe your father, mother were Brahmins, but you are a Kshatriya. Yeah, Vishwamitra was the opposite. His father, mother were Kshatriyas, but he became the Maharishi of Maharishis, you see. And he was a person who was a Brahmin. So therefore, none of this rigidity of birth, and readiness to welcome Muslims who want to be good Muslims, but culturally they don't want to be distinguishable from us. They will dress like us, they will look like us, and they will eat like us. So those cultural aspects have to be done. So I think I'm no more interested in the theory of what we were and all that, but preparing ourselves for a future where we implement a Hindu manifesto and make people psychologically a proud Hindu. This was my aim. I'm sorry it took so much time, but if there are any questions in the remaining time, I'll welcome them.
Thank you, Dr. Swamy. That was an interesting discussion on your book. Some of the questions, numerous people on our chat box as well as on other means of communication have conveyed many things. The main question some of them I want to ask is, what is actually preventing the present government, which has in its manifesto, the BJP has in its manifesto many things of which you have been mentioned in the book. What is preventing the government, in spite of being 8 years in power and having a clear-cut majority, what is really preventing the government of Mr. Narendra Modi to take effective steps to implement some of these manifesto items which are already there on the BJP agenda, like ban on cow slaughter, ban on conversion, uniform civil code? We would like to have your views. Some of the questions which are in our chat box.
From what I have observed, I find him the same problem that Vajpayee had, a desire to be accepted by the West. And that's a very dangerous thing, because the West, once they know that you care, then they'll go on raising the banner, and that's why he's not able to be assertive about those things that need to be done. They're done because we have RSS, and RSS is able to mobilize opinion. So we have done some things. I wouldn't say we have not done, but we have not been able to do this. All these things that you have just mentioned. Common Civil Code is the easiest thing to do, and the Supreme Court has 6 times said in cases which came up, why doesn't the government implement Article 44 in the Constitution, which is Uniform Civil Code? What's the difficulty? We did start this thing about in a small way, but then it stopped it. Same thing you see now, integration of our Kashmir thing. We did what we did was this Article 370 removed. After that, we have done nothing. No rules have been framed. Nothing. Nobody knows who's the government today. They are not even in a position to announce the elections. After how many? What? 2018 this happened. No, 2019. 2019 August, and today we are 3 years away, and there's no progress on that. It's still an it's a very unhappy situation. I think, in fact, VHS should have some conference in. I think we have been invited. I think our Harish Sharma has, and that lady who tweets very well. What's her name? Monica.
Monica Paul.
She's
Satish
arranging.
Maldar.
Now Maldar, her husband, and they are going to arrange a program for VHS. We must start. But the integration which we started is all completely standstill. Even that on that citizenship issue, we have not implemented it. In fact, many people who applied have gone back to Pakistan. You see, the Hindus, and suffering all kinds of horrible things there. So I feel that this fear that the West will get rough with you is the reason. Otherwise, Modi would not have gone and met in our own office the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris, what she has said afterwards to other people, has come back to us, and it's not very complimentary on what the conversation was like. But he went. He was the Prime Minister of India. In his protocol, only the president comes, not the vice president. And the vice president can come to see him, but he can't go and see her, and he doesn't know her. So it's not even a question of for informality. So I feel that this problem is there with India. We still have an inferiority complex for the West, and we want to please them. And that as long as that is there, this problem will be there. But I think we have to now address this problem that you have raised just now, and see that in future leadership doesn't care for what the West says, which is democratically. We are a democratic country. We can't do anything without Supreme Courts and all that, not blocking us. So therefore, we should say, this is a democratic country. These things happen, and this is how we feel, and then go forward. So, answer to your question is that the desire to be popular in the West is unfortunately has also bit some of our people in a Hindutva party like BJP.
Dr. Swamy, I have a couple of questions. So before I jump into it, what was your motivation to dedicate the book to Paramacharya?
You see, I met Paramacharya by accident. I mean, I was convent educated. I was totally Anglicized. I've been 7, 8, almost 10 years in America, and Americanized too. And then I come back to India, and one day I see him sitting near Kanchipuram, not in Kanchipuram, and I meet him. And I don't know. I mean, he said things which made me want to see him again and again. Then he started educating me and then looking after me and protecting me. I fought the LTT only because he gave me a cover. He said, "Nikavle pada that. You don't worry about it. I'll look after it." So I went after them, which nobody dared to do. So I mean, therefore, Parmacharya has been part of my what my new avatar as a Hindutva figure, away from a professor of economics.
So now that brings me to the other question. I mean, one of the questions that I've asked, being from the south and from Tamil Nadu and being in the community, why are Tamil Brahmins so timid and want to be just coolies? I mean, this is, I guess, even from the British times, they just want to be servants, subservient. I mean, what is wrong? I mean, intellect, as per our, Varna system, the intellects had, I mean, Chanakya. Imagine all those things had power. I mean, what made these people lose their backbone?
There are five lions in a circus. Why do they meekly submit? It's how you're brought up. Ayyo is the popular slogan of Tamil Brahmin. And they're all amazed at my fearlessness, but they said, "You can be, but we can't be." So, they just don't want controversy. They don't want the bureaucratic element that has been,
Is there a way to change their mindset, Dr. Swamy, or is
Oh,
it
it's
something?
changing. It's already changing. There's, I said, the latest generation. The process has begun, but it'll take a little more time. It's a. First of all, I tell all of them there is no such thing as a Brahmin community. You have to be a Jnani and Tyagi and a Sahasi. Otherwise, you're not. Read the Gita, I'll tell them. So they are identified as descendants of previous Brahmins. You can say that, of earlier Brahmins, and they are not true to their ancestry. Brahmin means fearlessness, and you see a lot of that in UP and other places. They may be poor, but they are very, very assertive. After all, look at this. In the 1977 elections, all the Brahmins voted for Mrs. Gandhi in Tamil Nadu. And what in UP, what happened in North? They wiped her out. We wouldn't be having democracy today but for the North Indians. Because the South Indians, I think the British had great hopes that it will remain. But unfortunately, people like Muthuraman Thevar and at least one Brahmin, he stood up, and all the sadhus they stood up. I must say the sadhus of Tamil Nadu are much more fearless and unafraid. In Tamil Nadu, Jayalalitha had arrested a Shankaracharya. There was no revolt. Till I went and started addressing meetings with the help of the VHP. Then people started talking, but still they were not ready to come for an agitation on that.
And now, Dr. Swamy, now the most critical issue as far as the Hindutva is concerned. What is stopping or preventing this government from putting the Kashmiri Hindus back to their rightful place? I mean, they're still living in shanties in Delhi and in camps.
Absolutely.
It is horrible situation.
After raising hopes.
Yeah, raising hopes in 7 years, 8 years. What is missing?
No, missing is just this, that you don't want Western censure. They'll take you to the UN and the UN mess is all you're making. You went there and put it in the UN when it was not necessary. After all, Kashmir merged into India like any other state. 400 odd states merged into, maybe even as much as 500 states merged, you see. So I think the people here. One of the things I find amongst the recent politicians in India is they have not come with the kind of background which the earlier, at least even they were not that good. But let's say take Moraji Desai, he was very firm. I mean, he was there only for a short period. Or Chandrasekhar, who was also very firm. I remember when he was in an even shorter period. Narasimha Rao, he had his own way, but he got
Mm.
everything done. So that educated type people who are genuinely educated, who don't have to fib about their education. They had been in because of the freedom movement and all. They had come into politics, and there was a great contribution of Mahatma Gandhi. We can't deny that. But recently, it has all been people. If you look at the educational qualification of most of the present leaders, it's very poor. I mean, I don't want to
Yeah.
say, because people say you are arrogant because you went to Harvard or something, but but the fact is, they don't know ABC. If, as I told you, gave you the example of Modi. First, he said about the doubling the GDP in 5 years, which requires 14.8% per year growth. Then he talked about this 2AB and all, but nobody even understood. Even I have not understood so far the complicated mathematics. I don't know whether you, the computer scientist, understood. You know, so I mean, this is there's no you can, they are not people who can argue and quote what Winston Churchill said, for example, or what Joseph Stalin said. They haven't come after a preparation for the post. They have
Mm.
come because of either caste reason or this reason, or some organization has pushed you up, that sort of thing.
I mean, even national interest per se, right? They've not been true nationalists. They've personal
Ah.
gain and nepotism to a large extent.
Take for example now, has Modi said that the Chinese have taken over your land?
No, absolutely
Not
not.
one word. Not one word. And so why? I mean, they have taken a whole lot of land. They even got that Galwan man to parade. All that you did is, okay, our ambassador will not go to the. We should have called that Kashmir as a lone Kashmiri candidate also back. Saying, why are you there? We don't want this. We don't want any Olympics held in China. We are not going to go. You should have. Why do you go to BRICS? Break with BRICS. How can you be in BRICS and Quad at the same time? So the part of the problem is the lack of accountability within our own country. Is there anybody ready to? Which newspaper is ready to criticize him for it? They're not. Even I criticize people. Say, "Oh, you're criticizing him." I'm not criticizing his policy. I'm not against him. I've known him for such a long time. I can't be against him.
Yeah, people mistake this thing as it is a personal attack. They're just so childish not
Yeah,
to find exactly what you're saying. You're attacking on the policies and saying what
yeah.
he said is not keeping up.
And many of them have been vindicated. You see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, be it China, be it Hindutva,
Yeah.
and economy,
Uh,
you name it. I mean,
economy.
and
Yeah.
you've been only attacking him on topics. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever you
I
described earlier, Dr. Swamy.
first wrote my
Mhm.
article in economics in Hindu op-ed in 2015. I said you're going to start declining, and they all started laughing
Mm.
at me. You see. And ultimately, I declined to 3% before the corona. So no, there's fear. This is the problem. Fear generates degeneration.
And Dr.
Doctor
Swamy,
Doctor
I
Swami.
have a term. One second. I have a term for this thing that you just said. I call it the white man acceptance syndrome. So that's pretty much what it is. And the last question, Jagdishji, I'm sorry. You're talking about the Hindu manifesto, what we need to follow. Sadly, this government has fallen and done the worst thing of taking over temples instead of doing the opposite. I just wanted to put that up. We've discussed this many times. It's just sad, that this government has decided to take over temples from the Hindus, but not done anything else they've not taken over a mosque or a church or anything else. Not that I'm asking them to, but I think they should not interfere in temples. So I just thought I'll put
But,
that
but,
out, let the
but there's
viewers
no,
know.
but there's no outrage in the party itself. The only man who was criticizing me is me, and I went and filed a case also. At least I got the treasury to be shifted back to the temple. Otherwise, by now it's been emptied. Yeah,
Jagdish, go ahead, sorry.
Dr. Swamy, my question, based on some of the feedback from the viewers, is that after the last 8-10 years of people speaking on Hindutva and you articulating it, BJP as a party is, I would say, amongst the parties, BJP at least is closer to the Hindutva manifesto. But we see in the elections, a lot of other parties are also falling in line, or at least wanting to do something on the Hindutva. So in the coming years, do you see that all the mainstream parties will find it difficult to reject a Hindu manifesto?
Absolutely, that is coming without doubt, because they are so defensive. They say no, I mean, the worst examples are the Nehru family. I mean, that is Sonia Gandhi's children. They were openly, one wears a Janeo in the wrong side on top of his clothes, and says, "I'm a Brahmin, I'm a Pandit." Why is the need for him to say all that? You see, so there is a consciousness growing, and the inferiority complex has gone in a great measure, and so now they know that you can't speak against Hindu interests, and that the Muslim consolidation is being challenged by independents like OIC and others, but more is the fact that that's not enough to get you victory. Earlier on, you got the bulk of your votes from the Hindus, and then a solid 10%, 15% addition by the minorities. But now the Hindus are shrinking. I mean, the recent generation of Hindus is now beginning to become more discriminating. They are ready to look at other options and things like that. But BJP also has to remember that you may be less bad than say the other parties, but if you don't implement what you promised to implement, and in fact you implement things which you said you would not do, like the Uttarakhand example, you will find that people will revolt. And I think these 5 elections of the states that we are going, that will be a wake-up call.
Thank you, Dr. Swamy. Another last question before I will ask Ramesh to wind up is, people said no, it's part of numerous books and discussions that on the question of partition, Pandit Nehru and Gandhiji and all that discussing, but Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was for exchange of population, because the Independence Act talked of a Muslim governed and a Hindu governed India, and while Ambedkar said if it is so, then there should be an exchange of population. But maybe the large-heartedness of all the then leaders in India, that we had a democratic country, and I would say in one word secular, but based on faith and all that, we had a country. But now if the same issues which led to the partition in 1947 are raising their head, how do we deal with it, or what are your views on it? Because we never went for a Hindu country, although we could have gone for it, and they formed a Muslim country based on their demand. But what could be now some issues propping up in parts of our country on the same religious line?
Well, it would be against Hindu ethos if you would go for a Hindu theocratic state. You see, that only Hindus can be prime ministers, only, all that. I don't think that is necessary. We are 80%, and you can function as a Hindu state without declaring yourself as a Hindu state. Second, you have done something wrong. You didn't listen to Ambedkar, but now To undo it is going to be tough. But I do find that there is just as there are hardliners who are getting a lot of importance because they're getting so much money from Pakistan and other places, and intellectual support from the West, which doesn't understand what it's all about. The fact is that the bulk of the Muslims um, have no real aversion to Hindus. The question is how to assimilate them, and that has to be done with great deal of sophistication. But it will happen. You see, we have in our VHS Hindus, Muslims who are perfectly in harmony with us. We have Muslims in BJP who have no problems, but these are only small numbers. But the fact is that my experience is that if we make clear that whatever Hindutva we are speaking is only for Hindus, and we will not interfere, like we did after a basic agreement with the Parsis, we never interfered with them. They could do what they like. They could feed their dead bodies to vultures. We didn't object. They, whatever customs they had, we never interfered, and they themselves also recognized that. Same thing with the Jews. The Christians and Muslims, the only problem is they want to convert. And if they flatly said that they don't believe in conversion activities, and if they could, which I don't think they can, but if they could say that we believe all religions lead to God, I tell you, then we'll have a Muslim renaissance in the world. If Indian Muslims were to say we believe all religions lead to God, so we don't think that any one religion has to claim superiority, as they claim, as Christians claim, and the Muslims claim. Okay. But we have to. Yeah, go on.
Go ahead.
No, I'm saying, but we have to be very careful because these people should not be a hopeless sense of hopelessness should not be created in the Muslim community, because there are lots of people who want to poach on it. We shouldn't allow that.
Jagdish, you had some words?
No, Ramesh, you can wind up.
Okay. So, Dr. Swamy, one last question, because it's a very good question from one of the viewers, and then we can close out.
Yeah.
The Western media, historians, Indologists, whatnot, have been demonizing or attacking, as you said in your book. I think it's part of your book, that how do they attack the Hindu icons, and how do they go on attacking, and talking and constantly harping this non-existent, to a large extent, casteism, saying that you're Dalit, you're this and that, and backwardness, and highlighting that constantly. And even recently, as far as the hijab issue is concerned, some U.S. senior person for religious freedom has come and claimed something, whereas they did not raise even a single finger when Hindus were massacred in Pakistan or Bangladesh, right? So how do we tackle this, Dr. Swamy? Why can't the MEA emphasize and put their foot down and call the ambassador in and give them a piece of the mind?
Absolutely right. That is the nerve that our government doesn't have. They crave for their thing, to go to America, meet the president, and then the local New York Times and the Washington Post and all don't even carry a line that you are here.
They don't care. Yeah, no, Dr. Swamy, they don't care. Yeah.
Oh, grand welcome, recognize as world leader. So this inferiority complex has to. We have to fight it. It has reduced compared to what it was before, but it's not reduced enough. This desire for validation by the West. I have taught at Harvard. From 1962, I went there and I cleared my general exam. Started teaching at Harvard, and I continue to teach till 2012. So, what a long period, Off and on I went, of course, because I preferred to stay in India. And I was a joint author with the most celebrated economist called the Einstein of Economics, Paul Samuelson, and I was my thesis advisor was Simon Kuznets, the man who invented the GDP. I mean, who would hardly take anybody unless, he really wanted to take him. And took me, and he treated me like a son, you see. So, despite that, and it's not that I was known as a Jansanghi from 1970, and I continued to go to Harvard regularly to teach. And suddenly, the new climate, they said, you wrote that Muslims must admit their ancestors are Hindus, and therefore this is hate speech. And now, of course, they have lost all the cases filed against me. Everyone has been dismissed. In fact, Guwahati's High Court has done wonderful by actually berating the people who filed the case, and said that is a gross abuse of the legal system. So, and on that basis, they didn't let me teach. Of course, I'm going to sue them now, because after Guwahati, I think all the hate speeches are over. So I think it's time for me to sue Harvard and make them apologize.
Thank you, Dr. Swamy. So
and if you do like that, if you retaliate, the Americans will also be okay. It's only when you don't retaliate the Americans. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Swamy. Thanks for. It was an excellent thing, because now the book is out. So I'm asking all the viewers to go. You can buy it on Amazon, or you can buy it directly from Haranand. You can go to their website. This book is right there on the website. Go to new releases. It's right there. So the Hindu Manifesto for India's Democracy. Fascinating discussion, Dr. Swamy, today, because you've explained your 5 important points which you've covered, which are key for you earlier talked about the Renaissance. It's no longer a Renaissance. Now we need a manifesto, get the action done. You've earlier given the blueprint. Now it's action items. So that hopefully this government, at least few people in this government, start reading the book. If they can't read, have somebody translate it for them, but at least read it, implement even if one of these are done, because the threats for in general, the Hindutva, in the Hindus, is definitely there, be it conversion, be it the demonization of Hindus across the globe. I mean, especially, putting India in a bad foot as far as anything that goes against, call us the Hindu terrorist or whatnot. I think the government should take a serious look at these things, read the book, get educated on these things, and at least grow a spine in the future, hopefully, and do something, about this. So thank you for giving us your time today, Dr. Swamy. Jagdish, thank you. Thanks to the technical team. And viewers, thank you for all your questions. I know it's very difficult to pick all the questions. We pick and choose a few of them. We kind of combine some of the questions that you asked and put them in one. So don't be upset if you're not asking your specific question. Sometimes that's the way it works, because we need to fit this into the time. So with this, and again, as I said, we also have whenever we do the show, we have a team that sits down late through the night and creates a podcast episode. So thanks to that team as well. So they do before the show or after the show. There's a lot of work being done. So the team deserves a big kudos. As Dr. Swamy says, he's just sitting in Delhi and chilling. So, but a lot of work gets done. But thanks to the team, they're dedicated. So they just they purely do it for the love of your your affection, Dr. Swamy. They respect you, and a lot of the viewers respect you. There are many of you who people joined before the show, and they're just waiting to see if they can come earlier. So they join about 30 minutes even before the show joins. So anyway, thank you again. So till we meet next week, hopefully, we're going to have another interesting topic for next week. So there are a lot of things happening, obviously. So probably it's going to be the hijab-related issue or not. By the time the courts would have something, I think it's going to be an interesting week ahead. So next week we'll meet you again next Sunday, and we'll have another good topic and have a great discussion. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jagdish. Yeah.
Thank you.